What's going on, guys? Welcome to a special edition, collector's edition of the Variant Issue. To my left this week, the axe to my smash, the demolition of comic podcast, the one and only Jimbo Slice.
You're on a wrestling kick lately, I see, huh?
Yes, sir.
Last episode, it was the
Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom, a.k.a. the Road Warriors. This week it's the demolition, huh?
Yep.
All right.
We got a very, very special episode for you guys that Jimbo Slice and I cooked up. We sat down with Steve Borock, president, primary grader for CBCS. And ladies and gentlemen, it was probably one of the craziest, coolest experiences that we've had in 17 episodes outside of the stuff we do in our day-to-day. But Jimbo Slice can sum it up substantially better than I can.
Yeah, for me, it was, I'm not even thinking about the amount of episodes. It was, for me personally, it was one of the coolest, most fun experiences that I've ever had in this lifetime, because I am definitely nerd, geek, mutant, and freak. And aside from Steve being who he is and what he does for a living, he's one of the most legitimate, humble, down-to-earth people that I've ever had a conversation with. The guy is just 4 aces across the table, period.
Yeah, we really wanted to give you guys, we talk about grading a lot over the last few episodes, different facets of it. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to bring somebody in, demystify the grading process, go into the ins and outs, explain the amount of detailing and work that's involved in getting books graded, and really, really just showing an appreciation for the art form. And I think that Steve did that in spades, just really educating not only us, but we hope educate you guys on the finer points of grading and what goes into getting books graded.
Aside from him just being a stand-up guy, he's legitimately passionate about comic books.
Yep.
And the things that fall under that umbrella. So.
Yep. So you guys are in for a treat. So without further ado, let's take it away and enjoy our interview with Steve Borock from CBCS. All right, guys, we got a special guest on this week's episode of The Variant Issue. President and primary grader of CBCS, Steve Borock, is joining us. Myself and Jimbo Slice are going to break down some of the stuff in the grading, in the world of grading, and Steve's going to educate us and you guys. So without any further ado, let's take it away. What's going on, Steve? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good. Again, thank you once again for taking the time out to spend some time with us and our listeners and school us on grading and CBCS and all the work that you guys do.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's there's a lot of misconceptions about grading and especially certification. So it's a pleasure to be talking with guys who are into comic books and understand the hobby and help answer questions.
Do you want to give our listeners a little background on exactly what it is you do and how you kind of broke into this part of the industry itself?
Okay. Well, I've been in the hobby since I was a kid. I was reading comic books before I knew how to read. My dad was bringing them home for me from New York City, even before I could read. So I just fell in love with the pictures, of course, like most little kids.
Yep.
And got heavily into it. New York City was a really cool scene for comic books back in the day. In the 70s, I set up my first show. I was only able to afford half of a table at a Phil Stealing marketplace. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. It was more about, selling a few comic books, just be able to buy another comic book.
Exactly.
And back in those days, I mean, it was like the bottom of the Alpine Hotel and the Taft Hotel, Hotel Roosevelt. I mean, it was like really these like weird kind of flea market things, not really conventions.
Right.
And but it was really, really great. Just a great way to grow up. And so I stayed around, became one of the top collectors in the world. I've owned 2 Action Comics #1s.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm very serious.
If you don't mind answering this question, how in the world did you come across those 2 books?
Well, I had them at different times.
Okay.
Because through networking, and if you had enough money, you could buy anything. I traded um, a boatload of comic books for one of my Action Ones, and one of the Action Ones I got time payments through this place that no longer exists called the Pacific Comic Exchange.
Okay.
Um, and I paid it off over, something like, I don't know, like 15 months.
Wow.
But back in the day, it wasn't worth what it is now, right? I mean, at the time, I thought I was crazy spending, $60,000 on an Action One.
Wow.
Now, that same book, if I still had those books, I could retire,
Seriously. That's wow. That's
Right.
mind blowing.
And then the Certified Collectible Group, which was certifying coins at the time, wanted to get into comic books and to certify comic books. And they went to the top dealers and top collectors, and they asked who they trusted, who could grade, who could check for restoration, which is really, really important because people were getting ripped off like crazy.
Okay.
Buying books that were color touched or re-glued or had married pages. They weren't worth the same as if they were untouched.
Right.
And my name came to the top of the list, and I talked with them, and it was a really strange thing. They came to me with this concept about putting comic books in a plastic case, and I was like, this doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
You don't do that.
Right. You can't, because you can't read them at that point.
Right. And they were telling me exactly what happens in coins and sports cards and how, they basically help protect people from things I was just talking about, the undisclosed restoration, or actually something I didn't even touch on, like way overgrading. And
Right.
eBay, this is 1999, and my friends were getting killed on eBay. The protections on eBay that eBay has or doesn't have these days, they did have sometimes and didn't at times. They're ever changing. But you'd buy this book and you'd find out later it was restored and you couldn't return it because it was 10 days afterwards,
Right.
whatever. And it was really bad, or you forget to count the pages and, you go to sell it and find out the centerfold's missing, right? And so they were going to do it like coins, where you couldn't open it unless they use a vice to crack it,
Mhm.
believe it or not. And I said, you can't do that with comic books. I said, this has to be a buying and selling tool. So you become the good housekeeping seal of approval in a way. And I told them that they had to let me pick my own team because I wanted honest people and knowledgeable people. And they didn't understand that unlike coins and cards, you have to count the pages and you have to check for restoration between the folios.
There's so much work involved.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, you can grade probably like 60 coins in the same time you can do a comic book, especially like a Golden Age comic book.
Right.
And so I convinced them that the holder had to be openable, had to be tamper evident. So if you ever had a graded comic book, you know that from the sides you can kind of open it up a little and then crack it. And then the interior in ours is PETG, which is used by the Library of Congress. And so it's archival safe. And so then you have that, and you can use a scissor to cut it out. You have to be very, very careful. But at least you can take your book out. So this way, nobody would say, "Oh, you've contained my book. I can't get it out." It's changed a lot where people don't take them out anymore. If you have an Action One, they don't take it out because they can read the reprint anywhere.
Right.
And then there's people who have, they've changed. It's changed from its original model. People who aren't cracking it out, what they do is they have these collector's sets and they compete to have the best of the best.
Yep.
And so they're like, I have, Superman 1 through 100 and, the Superman 1 is in 6.0, the Superman 2 is in 7.5, and so on, and they compete. And but as almost everybody's noticed, that it's become the best buying and selling tool on the internet. All the major auction houses use either us or our competitor, and so I worked there for a bunch of years, and I got kind of burnt out on grading.
Right.
And I didn't own a piece of it, even though I helped start it.
Okay.
And it kind of bothered me. And so I went and worked as a senior consignment director for Heritage Auctions, and they're the largest collectibles auction house in the world, and they're the third largest auction house in the world in general, behind Sotheby's and Christie's, and they're catching up quite fast, actually, because they embraced technology and the internet as opposed to live auctions.
Right.
They're incredible. And so I was their senior consignment director for years. I brought in millions and millions of dollars worth of comic books and comic book art. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And all the time I was doing that, people kept asking me if I would open up another grading service because people don't like a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think I would be into it, but I do enjoy really good steak dinners. And I would let people take me out. I would let people take me out, for dinner, and they'd pitch me. And I ran into a problem where the people who were honest, who really wanted to see this work, didn't understand how much money it would cost to open up a grading service.
Right.
They'd say, "Oh, we have, $250,000,000,000," and I was like, "Well, that's not going to do it." And they were like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I need like 2.5 million to open." And
what?
Wow.
Oh yeah,
I
sure.
had
I mean,
no
think
idea
about
that
it.
number was anywhere close to that number.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's daunting. And so these honest guys were like, "Well, we don't have that." And then I'd meet up with certain guys who were like, "Oh, $250,000, that's not a problem. All we have to do is sell some grades here and there. Give this guy, instead of an 8.0, give him a 9.0 on an Action 1, and, that kind of stuff." And I was like, "Oh my God, am I really sitting at a table with these slimy people?"
Yep. Basically fat comic book guy.
And it was criminal, and I wouldn't do this. Like I said, I grew up in this hobby, and people trust me, and I love this hobby. I mean, I still read a comic book every night before I go to sleep. I don't collect comic books anymore. I wanted to make sure I was completely impartial and third party. So I sold my collection and started collecting original comic book art. So this way, nobody could say, "Well, Steve Borock has an Action 1 in 6.0. He's going to grade mine a 5.0 because he doesn't want to have, a better copy out there." I wanted to dispel any kind of notions of anything going on. And so I was working with Heritage, and it was, like I said, it was a great gig. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the Seamus art collection. It's the cover for Spider-Man 1 by McFarlane and stuff like that. I brought that in.
Wow.
I brought in the Doug Schmelk collection that went for 2.5 mil. And it was, just a great time playing with other people's collections.
Right.
And then one day I get a phone call from my now partner, Michael Bornstein, this great guy. He was fed up with the competition. He had some very unpleasant dealings with them. And through friends of friends, he got my name and got my number and called me up. And, as usual, I was very skeptical. We spoke on the phone for hours, and we seemed to have had the same vision. So went out to Texas, where he lived. He flew me out to Texas and put me up. And we spent an entire weekend with him and his son. He's a very, very smart guy. And we hashed out over about 48 hours what we wanted to see in a grading service and how much money it would cost. And it's really funny, when we got to the point of trying to figure out costs, we came up with the exact number I told him.
Wow.
Holy cow.
And I'm not the businessman. He's the businessman. I'm just the comic geek, right?
Okay.
And we put it together, and we started with 6 employees out of St. Petersburg, Florida. And we're now up to 33 or 34 employees. We'll have our official 3-year anniversary in July.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you. It's been a long, long road. But it's been a lot of fun and exciting, as well as a lot of hard work.
A lot of work. I know grading a book that's very meticulous, time-consuming work to do that.
Oh, sure. It really is. And you have to be able to sit in your seat and grade. And I'm very, very lucky. I don't just sit in my seat and grade. I also deal with the clients. So I go to most conventions across the country.
Okay.
And so I get to go out and hang out with the same friends I've had for 35 years, and some, become our new friends through social media, especially Facebook. We have a giant dinner every year in Chicago, where giants of the industry go. I mean, we've had Bob Overstreet, Maggie Thompson, Neil Adams, Gary Colabono, who's helped start the Chicago Comic Con, and Michelle Nolan, one of the great, historians of our hobby. And we get a lot of artists that show up, and writers. It's really cool. And we get a private room at Gibson's every year, and it fills up. Like, we're out of room. We can't have people show up anymore. And then afterwards, after the dinner, people come from their other dinners and come hang out with us at the bar and have drinks or sodas or whatever. It's really a fantastic time. It's really for a nerd like me, it's just it's a dream come true.
You know what I want to know at that dinner now? You keep referencing yourself like a nerd like me. I say the same thing about myself a lot of times. When you're in the room with all these people of the industry, do you ever get, so to speak, starstruck? Because I'm one of those people, I've been very fortunate in my life where I've not only got to meet a lot of people that I admire growing up, I actually became friends with a lot of them. And I never really get starstruck, but around certain comic book artists and writers, I do get a little starstruck. It's a little weird. Do you ever get like that with any of these people?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I totally geek out. I remember playing poker one night. Gareb Shamus, who started Wizard,
okay,
invited me to a poker game.
Oh, geez.
And I didn't know. I didn't know. I've been friends with the Shamuses for many, many years. Really nice guys, Stephen and Gareb. But I didn't realize that I was playing cards with Jim Lee and Jay Lee and David Mandel, who was the writer of Seinfeld at the time and is writing for Veep right now. He's a giant comic art collector. And Paul Dini was there, who created Harlequin.
Right.
And I didn't even know it. So when we broke for pizza, I'm talking to these guys. I'm like, so anyway, what do you do? And this guy, Jay, says, oh, I'm an artist. I said, oh, for what? He says, Marvel. And I'm like, really? What do you do? He said, the Inhumans. I'm like, you're Jay Lee? And they're like, I couldn't play poker after that with these guys and try to bluff and talk crap.
Yeah, that totally threw you off your game.
Oh, yeah. It was really bizarre. I'm like, you're Jim Lee? And I've become friends with Jim Lee since then. But I'm still starstruck. Like, Neil Adams and I are really good friends, and his wife, Marilyn, we're very good friends. And I can't believe he still shows up at, like, our dinners and stuff.
It's funny. I actually just met him recently.
The creator of Cerebus as used to draw me stuff and just, like, yeah, I was drawing this, and I thought about you, and here's a really cool thing of Cerebus, and really just fantastic. Nick Cardy lived here in Sarasota before he passed. A sweet old man. He used to tell me the same stories over and over again about the war. Very, like I said, very lucky. Really, really blessed with this life. But yeah, I do get starstruck all the time. I mean, I know Dave Gibbons pretty well, the artist for Watchmen. Yeah, I can go on, but like Bob Overstreet is a friend of mine, and I can't believe that. And he's also like a mentor in a way, to keep me on the straight and narrow when I first started, in professional grading, if that's the right word.
Right.
And he taught me about ethics, and I already knew them, but it's to aspire to be somebody, that Bob Overstreet would go, wow, I trust this guy. The Overstreet Price guy has been the Bible of our hobby for 47 years now?
As long as I can remember.
Yep. That's what we priced with when I worked in a comic store when I was growing up. It was the Overstreet Price Guide was reference number 1, and the back of Wizard was reference number 2.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys are showing your age. You're younger than I am. I didn't have Wizard to price with.
Yeah. We had to. And my boss would be like, if it's not an Overstreet, look at the back of the Wizard. And that would be, and that'd
exactly.
be it. And then he'd be like, find the middle price, and then go $1 or $2 above the middle price. Like that was his thing.
That's funny.
It's funny you're talking about Neil Adams. I just recently met him earlier this year at this comic book shop, Royal Collectibles over in Forest Hill, Queens, and me and him.
Cool! I bet you he was wearing a blue shirt.
You know what? I actually have the picture in my phone. I'm going to look to see if you're right about that. But I couldn't help it. Me and him, we actually got into a discussion about boxing because, he did the famous Ali Superman cover. And
sure.
When I shook
he did the whole book.
Exactly. And when I shook his hand, I couldn't believe how big his mitts were. His hands are like the size of boxing gloves.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
Sure. No, Neil's a great guy. I really, really enjoy hanging out with him in Maryland. Very nice people.
Yeah, he was very, very approachable, and me and him were definitely going back and forth about boxing for a while. Yeah,
he loves talking about things other than comic books because he has to talk about comic books
all the time,
all day long at the shows and stuff. So if you talk to him about how the Earth has evolved, he'll love to get into that with you. Believe it or not.
Oh, I didn't know that. You know what? This is so crazy. I just went into my phone and I'm looking at the picture, and Steve's right on the money. He's wearing a blue shirt. I don't believe this.
Told you.
He's not even lying. He's wearing a blue shirt. He had a jacket on, but you could see the blue shirt right underneath it. That's so crazy.
That's his signature shirt. So whenever I have my dark blue shirt on, everybody says to me, "Oh, you wearing Neil's shirt today?"
That's hilarious. I have a very I've been wanting to ask this question to someone who worked in the industry for a very, very long time. With certain professions, when you turn into a professional or just even a civil service job, you have to take a test and you have to meet certain criteria, whether it be educational wise or, you have to have some type of experience. What is there any type of criteria? If I or somebody else in the world wanted to become a quote unquote professional comic book grader, is there any specific criteria to meet in order to apply for a position like that in the industry?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, love for comics is necessary. You have to love comics. You would get burnt out in no time if you didn't. But that's only a small part of it because your knowledge of comic books is really important. You have to know that when you're grading a Hulk 181, that the Marvel Value Stamp is the right Marvel Value Stamp page. So, do you guys know which Marvel Value Stamp is in a Hulk 181?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Right. Well, it's Sheena, and you have to look for that page to see if it's been married in because as little kids, we all cut out those Marvel Value Stamps.
Oh, okay.
So when you're buying a Hulk 181, the first thing you should do if it hasn't been certified is you have to count the pages, and you have to make sure that Marvel Value Stamp is still there.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a strange page counts. Some books are like 12 and 16, but the stuff that from the 60s and 70s and all that, that's usually just 8 and 8. 8 pages on each side, 8 folios.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to know if that cover is the right cover for the interior. People marry covers all the time. You have to know what to look for restoration. Now, not everybody knows restoration real well, so we train our people, but they have to know something. They have to be able to spot amateur color touch and amateur tear seals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised at how many people miss something that is very, very obvious. Their eyes are not trained for it, and they didn't grow up in it. They just bought comic books. We're in the middle of grading this large collection right now, and I mean, everything has a little bit of glue here or married pages. And when I say a married page, I wasn't sure if I was clear enough, but what they do is they take the book apart, and if a folio is missing or a page is missing,
right,
they get another copy
and they put it
from another right, and they put it in there, or sometimes they put the wrong page in. Sometimes they'll just take any page from a Golden Age book or Silver Age book and put it in there.
Okay.
So these are the things you have to kind of be able to know already. If you're going to be a modern grader, you have to know the ins and outs because there's so many variants and things like that. And direct edition, the newsstand. I mean, well, it says direct and newsstand on it, but we put that on the label.
Mm-hmm.
And attention to detail is huge. I mean, that's the biggest thing is you have to really pay attention. You can't just sleepwalk through this job.
Right.
And it's why it's hard to get really, really good graders. Most people don't want to sit. They think they do. They'll tell you they want to sit and grade comic books all day long
until they start doing
it for a year. Right. And then they're like, oh man, if I see another Spider-Man 300, you know.
Right.
And the reason I use that example is I just got a box that came onto my desk, and it was 50 copies of Spider-Man 300.
50. Wow.
Yeah, and that book is notorious for color touch, so you really have to look at the blacks really closely, but if you have to do the same book over and over and over and over again, it becomes monotonous.
Right. You really have to really truly love what you're actually doing. You know, that's the way I see it with this kind of job, at least. You know.
Oh, absolutely. Because right after I did that box of Spider-Man 300s, I was able to do all these great Golden Age books, and I'm like, oh right, I used to own this one. This is so cool, you know, and or wow, I've never seen the splash page, you know. This is really neat. It's all these like ghoulish Nazis and all this stuff, you know, from World War II, and it's a lot of fun. But at times it can be, repetitive.
Of course, very redundant. You know, I have one more quick question before I kick it over to Rich. I noticed this trend these last couple of years that's been popping up. You know, before someone goes and wants to get their book rated, these two techniques that I've recently discovered called pressing and cleaning. You know, what's your take on that? And as far as I know, pressing and cleaning isn't considered restoration. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that. And, please, if you can break that down to our listeners.
Sure. It depends on what kind of cleaning you're talking about. If you're talking about like a dry cleaning where you're taking a little bit of Wonder Bread or light dry eraser to get some of the dirt off of the book, that's okay. If you're talking about a solvent bath or water wash, that's not okay.
Okay.
That's considered restoration.
Okay. Now,
pressing itself is not considered restoration, and it's not a new trend. It's been going on forever.
Really?
I mean, heck, when I was a kid, and we're talking, many, many, many moons ago, that I would take, remember those gigantic dictionaries that used to be around?
Of course, the Webster's.
So I'd take two of those and put a cinder block on top of it.
Okay.
So I'd have the comic book in the middle of the dictionary and put a cinder block on top of it to get the spine roll out of these Golden Age books.
Right.
And Silver Age books. The techniques have gotten to a point where it's they're doing a lot better job at it. But it's been around forever.
Yeah, I wasn't
new to the hobby.
I wasn't hip to any of this up until recently. Actually, I'm like, cleaning, pressing. What are you guys talking about? And exactly what you just said. I was asking around, because I know a lot of people that own shops and, people in high up, people in low positions. And I'm getting all different kind of answers. And one of the first things I was actually told about was the Wonder Bread thing at first. So when you said that right now, I was like, oh, wow, I guess it's been going on a lot longer than I've realized because I wasn't aware of any of that stuff.
Yep, it's been going on for a long, long time, and it was a secret in a way. A lot of the people didn't want anybody else to know that they could make a book look better, so they kept it to themselves. And when I was with my competition, it kind of came to light, and everybody was saying, "Oh, this is brand new," and I kept saying it wasn't, and it was a real strange time. But you have to be honest with people. You have to let them know what's going on. But if a book is pressed correctly, you'll never know.
Exactly.
The problem is now is that everybody thinks they can buy like a T-shirt press and press a book, and they're ruining the book.
You'll destroy it from the heat.
I'm seeing so many. Oh, it's not just heat. Even the cold press.
Really?
Yeah, they pancake them.
Right. It becomes like the page becomes sealed, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, well, sometimes, yeah, that's from extreme heat, and especially the modern Marvel stock. We're seeing pages stuck together or ink lifted, things like that. Everybody thinks they know how to press. They're like, "Oh, I saw a YouTube video."
Right.
And you get what you pay for, in this life, right? Whether it's pressing or anything else. I would just tell people to use a professional.
Right. Well, once again, how do people really decide who's professional at doing something like that? Because for me, like if I had a very rare, expensive book, I'd be very leery to just hand it over because there's a good chance that book can get ruined if that person doesn't know what they're doing.
Right. Exactly. Well, there's so many forums to go to. I mean, I would send you to, of course, since it's my company, I would send you to the Facebook page, CBCS Comic Collectors Club.
Okay.
Right. And you can ask questions there, and there's very seasoned collectors on there. There's novices and seasoned collectors. We have in-house pressing,
okay.
So you could send it to us. So you go to our website, and but you can ask around. There's people doing pressing that have been doing it for many, many years.
That's good. That's all good information to know. I wasn't even aware that CBCS did pressing.
Definitely good to know.
Yeah, it's fairly new to us. We had to compete. Our competitors have in-house pressing. So to compete, we opened in-house pressing as well.
Right. That just makes sense.
Well, I got a couple of things in regards to that. I figured the first being with regards to your grading process, what's the average allocated time to grade a book? And if you grade a particular book a couple of times, are there certain markers that you set for yourself, whether it's you doing the grading or any of your staff, for certain imperfections? Like you were talking about, Spider-Man 300 and, some of the things that are that, you look for that stick out. What are some other things that people should be aware of?
Well, like I said, the Marvel value stamp in the 70s books, it's huge. I mean, that's something to always do. Always count pages. People miss pages. I do books every day that are missing pages. Learn the count. And if you're not sure if it's a Golden Age book that has a funky count, go on comic book websites. Comics.org tells you how many pages are in a book. It's a really great resource, comics.org. It'll give you all the information on the writers, the artists, the titles, but especially the page count. And there's things to look for on, like Spider-Man 300 actually has a rough cut to a lot of them. People think it's trimmed, and it's not. It's just a bad manufacturing defect.
Huh.
And so we don't take off for that the way we would if somebody took a razor and kind of made the edge a little rough. There's distribution ink from when the distributors used to color code the tops of the book, or the bottom, or the edge, and because they were able to return them. And sometimes people will color touch that distribution ink onto a married cover. There's so many things to look for. It's it's hard to tell you. On each book, it's different. on Avengers 16. That's the first real change in lineup,
Right.
right? It's a great iconic cover with Captain America in the middle, and then little pictures of
Yep. The new members.
everybody, right, and the old members. Well, there's a notorious manufacturing defect where there's a little hole on Thor by the spine,
Oh wow.
and everybody, at first when you first see it, you just think, oh, somebody put a little tear in it. No, it was actually manufactured that way. A lot of the first issues from 1968, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. #1 is notorious, where the gripper was set too tight. So you either have a little tear on the top of the back cover on the left edge, or the chip is actually missing because the gripper was set too tight during the collating process. Iron Man Submariner #1 is notorious for that. Iron Man 1, Submariner #1, other books. But this is the stuff you keep, you grew up learning,
Right.
or somebody has taught you.
Well, with that, going a step further, with that, like I said, you have certain markers for that. Now, when you're training new hires for grading, what are there certain things that you kind of almost like a handbook, like, hey, this is something you really should look out for? And I'm going to use more modern books,
Guidelines.
more guidelines, like more criteria, and more so with modern books now, as there's 20 different variants of a cover. Retailer editions. Like where does that fall with training somebody new?
It's funny because as you're asking that question, I'm thinking to myself, well, you just brought up variants. Them at CBCS, they have to know, okay, this book came out, it's got this many variants and other variants. This one was a 1 in 25. This one was a 1 in 100. Like, that's a lot to have to keep record of.
Right.
Right, but we do keep record of it. And when new books are coming out, we're constantly updating our database, and it becomes secondhand knowledge as you do it enough. Right. So I don't handle a lot of the moderns, but I remember when Star Wars 1 came out, was there 100 different covers or something crazy like that? We had to keep track of every cover and make sure we got it right. But the thing is that our modern department knows this stuff because these are the guys who live and breathe moderns. They're the guys who go to the store every Wednesday and pick up their books. And they just live and breathe it. It's fantastic. But they have a love, once again, when you ask me about what's important, the love for the comics and the love for the hobby.
No, I think that's, tenets to live by.
Oh, yeah. You have to.
Well, with going on the, into the subject of variants, how do you guys approach now that individual retailers are getting their own variants, and how do you guys, go create criteria for that? Because, Midtown will have their 4 or 5 for XYZ artists.
Well, there's no criteria because comic books are graded the same way.
Okay.
So when it comes to grading, the grading doesn't differ unless there's, once again, a printing defect that's normal on every book.
Gotcha. Now, how do you guys learn about those printing defects?
By seeing enough of them.
Okay. Just consistency at that point.
Right. It's all about consistency and all about, doing research. So, like, if I'm just going to make up something. So you see the newest issue of Spider-Man.
Okay.
And it's got an ink blotch by the logo.
Got it.
Well, then you go on the web and you look up other issues if it's the first time grading it. And you see that, they all have them. Okay, great. So you don't take off anything for it. Right.
Okay.
But then if you look and you realize that, 1 out of 1,000 have it, well, you have to grade that a little differently.
Gotcha. Now, how does it work with? Well, let me rephrase that. What is a book, in your opinion, that has been the subject of a lot of alteration? Like, what's a book you come across often that gets altered frequently?
Well, like I was telling you, Spider-Man 300 gets hit with black color touch quite often.
Okay.
It's notorious for it. But I'm seeing books that came out last year with a little bit of black color touch on it. So you have to be very diligent about what you're looking for because it's not common.
Right.
But somebody decided like, hey, this doesn't look like a 9.8, and it's always that 1%. It's probably not even 1%. It's probably even less than 1%. Of the hobby that ruins it for everybody else.
Sounds about right.
But there's always going to be thieves out there. When there's money involved, there's always going to be thieves. And that's why, once again, certification is the good housekeeping seal of approval.
Right.
And it's not that the certification companies don't make mistakes. We're human. So you take a human element out of it, you'll never find 100% perfection.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
I don't care what you do in life.
I am glad. I'm glad you mentioned
to what?
No, I'm glad you said that because we joke around and it's like, what happens when people disagree with grading? How do you guys handle that? Like, if somebody's expecting to get 9.5 and you guys go through the book, do they and they can test it? How do you guys handle that?
Okay, well, basically, first of all, there's no 9.5. It goes 9.2 to 9.4 to 9.6. And
why is that?
But that's the grading scale that Overstreet uses, and it's probably the easiest scale to use. It starts with 0.1, believe it or not, because people will actually send in a page from Action Comics #1.
Wow.
It's not a full comic book, but it's
Nice.
It's not even a pour. It's less than a pour. It's pour is 0.5. But people want it because it's worth money. It's worth quite a bit of money. And so we start with 0.1 and we go all the way to 10.0. And it jumps usually by 0.5. So it goes after you go 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, 1.0, 1.5, and then there's a 1.8 because it just didn't, you couldn't break it down by 0.5s, and then it goes 2.0, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, so on, until you get to 9.0. And then once you're at very fine near mint, which is 9.0, you have to start breaking it down into smaller numbers because it's really one little defect that changes it.
Right, the
So you go from 9.0 to 9.2, to 9.2 to 9.4, 9.4 to 9.6, 9.6 to 9.8, and then if, by some miracle, you land some close to perfect book, you get a 9.9 or a 10,
which
is
very rare.
Very rare.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's like winning the lottery. It's been handled. Even just coming off the press,
exactly.
Somebody handled it to put it into a box, right? So and also, if it's miscut, it's not going to get the 9.9 or a 10, and production quality isn't always great. And then there's been books, vintage books. Spider-Man 19, there's a 9.9 out there. Now that's a very common issue in high grade, the 19. But just seeing that book is incredible. It's mind-boggling. But then when you're talking about high grades, I always considered like fine, very fine, a high grade for Golden Age books.
Right.
Like 7.0. Now, that's not to say there isn't any 9.8. There's plenty of 9.8s actually, because you have collections like the Edgar Church Mile High collection or the San Francisco collection. These books were stored incredibly well, and they're just unbelievably gorgeous. White pages, sharp corners, heavy gloss, just beautiful. If you've never seen an Edgar Church Mile High copy or a Tom Riley San Francisco copy, do yourself a favor. Talk to one of the major players and ask if they have one that you could see. And you won't believe it. They're just that beautiful. I used to own many, many San Francisco's and Church copies.
Wow.
I owned the Morphin 52 at one point, the first Spectre.
Wow.
And I owned the Flash Comics #1, the first Flash, first Hawkman. at one point.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, it was just beautiful.
That's a long way from a half a table at the comic book show when you were a kid.
Yeah, well, that's, if you're passionate about something and you love something and you keep doing it, I believe, and you get lucky.
Yep, luck has a big part to do with it.
Sure, I believe that you'll turn your dreams into a reality.
I agree with you.
I never could have imagined that I'd be doing what I do today when I was a kid. I thought I was going to end up at my dad's printing place, because that's basically what it was back then. Your dad had a business, you learned it. And luckily for me, my dad had a printing place. So I learned about printing techniques. So I knew when I'm looking at books, if this book was tampered with, because it didn't look right to me. Or I knew that the reason for that Nick Fury #1 having the chip out was the gripper was too tight.
Yeah, so what you were doing with your
very,
family
very
business, that allowed you to really kind of pull all that together to make the business happen. It's like one door kind of almost paved the path to almost kind of break down like a formula of what to look for.
Sometimes, but sometimes it was just talking with other collectors and other dealers. I used to put together dinners in New York City with collectors and dealers, and we'd pull out we'd finish dinner, and then we'd have the tablecloth changed. We'd pull out our recent buys or our recent trades, and we'd pass them around the table.
Wow.
And we'd learn from each other. And we had some of the largest dealers in the world and some of the largest collectors in the world and some of the smallest dealers in the world and some of the smallest collectors in the world show up at these dinners. I became friends with so many people at the conventions. I didn't care if you collected modern books or if you collected Golden Age or if you were a big player or if you were a small player or if you were no player, just liked reading comic books. I will talk comic books with anybody.
That's awesome. I highly admire that. I'm constantly being made fun of because I'm going to be 40 years old and I'm, every Wednesday, like clockwork, I'm at 2 or 3 different comic book shops picking up my new books. I picked up my first actual purchase of comic books was in the 3rd grade, and it was the same year, ironically, that The Killing Joke came out, which I had no business buying or reading in the 3rd grade.
That's right, especially in the 3rd grade. Forget it, man.
Yeah, and I came up in a boxing family, so also that same day of that purchase, I also purchased I forget what punch the number is, but he's coming out of the corner of a boxing ring. He's got gloves on. So, for me, that was...
sure. I know the cover.
Yeah.
I just don't know the issue number.
That was like a home run for me, seeing that cover, and then I was very attracted to the artwork of The Killing Joke. I had no idea what that book was about. And, I have literally every single book I ever got from when I was a kid till present day. I never let go of anything.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Rich knows I'm a very passionate, intense lunatic when it comes to this stuff. I love it. It's more than just people are like, oh, you do it for money. I'm like, no, you don't get it. I'm like, I love just having the book in my hand, staring at the artwork, reading every single thing from the front page to the last page. Like, I'm crazy. Like all my friends think I'm a complete lunatic.
Yeah, you're not crazy. You're one of us.
Yeah, 100%. And I drive, like, I go to a handful of places, whether it's in the city, in Queens, Nassau, Suffolk. I'm all over New York. I even go upstate New York to places. Whenever I'm on vacation, right away I'm on Google. I'm looking to see what comic book shops are in the area because I just want to bring home something from that trip from that store. And I'm very meticulous on the condition of my books because when I was a kid like you, I mean, my family, they didn't have money like that. So whatever little bit of books I was getting, it was from doing odds and ends, jobs around the neighborhood, this, that, the other, collecting literally change and just trying to buy whatever I could. But I never really had very good condition books because a lot of it I was buying from just kids in the neighborhood and they didn't take care of them. So as I got older, I became very, very thorough with the condition of my books. And when I read my books, I have like a little system with, like I was laughing before when you said you're at these meetings and you asked to have the new tablecloth put down, like 100%. I don't want anything near these books when I'm reading them. I'm like so careful.
That's right.
And that's just me because I didn't have a whole lot growing up. So things that I do have, I really, really take care of them. And I'd like to have them in as pristine condition as possible. That's just me,
Sure. No, Believe me, I totally understand. And there's an OCD to it too.
100%. 100%. I'm very, very OCD.
It's part of our hobby. So,
Absolutely.
you're not alone. I mean, think about how many people show up for the conventions these days. I mean, it's a phenomenon. When I was a little kid, I'd get beat up wearing my Hulk T-shirt to school.
Right.
Here comes Hulk. And now it's cool. My daughter's friends think I have the greatest job in the world.
Yeah, it's fun. It's actually funny to me because I didn't realize it growing up as a kid. Like, you don't sit down and really rationalize kind of in the moment of what you're doing. But as I got older, I started to realize that it was basically, I feel like it was a subculture that is almost going into pop culture now because, obviously,
well, it is pop culture.
Yeah, Disney taking over Marvel, these movies, the shows, and I feel like so many people are just, getting into it. And then I've seen, me and Rich, we were talking last week, and I said, all these people that help produce these numbers as far as like the movies goes, it sells out and it breaks box office records. I'm like, I say to myself, out of the people who go watch these movies who didn't grow up reading books and collecting books, I wonder what the percentage of them actually, says to themselves, you know what, let me go to a comic book store and go see what this is all about and actually start reading and become like an avid reader of the books,
Well, we're hoping, the hobby that, when I say we, I meant the hobby, that more people, because of the movies, if they're good, I hear Wonder Woman is fantastic. Everybody's been raving about it.
Right.
And we're hoping that, that gets people to pick up comic books. But you touched on something that's really, really, really important, pop culture. I mean, comic books are one of only two American art forms. We have jazz and we have comic books. Everything else was invented somewhere else. I mean, we're a young country.
You're right.
But if you ask a 12-year-old girl who Wonder Woman is, or you say, who is the vice president of the United States, most of the time they'll know who Wonder Woman is, but they will not know who the vice president of the United States is.
You're right.
Right.
It's incredible. It's really seeped into our culture. I mean, I see people who don't know anything at all about comic books wearing a superhero T-shirt.
Yep, I see it all the time.
Because they think it's cool.
Yep, it's the thing to do at the given moment.
Right, and so we're very fortunate to be in such a time where the movies have been fantastic. I mean, I grew up with such bad stuff being shown on TV, and
right.
Even the first Superman movie, which I love. If I go back and watch it with Christopher Reeves, it's not the same. So DC has not done a good job with the movies, in my opinion.
I agree.
So I still think that the Christopher Reeves movie is better than anything they've put out. So I hear, like I said, Wonder Woman's fantastic, and some of my friends are saying that the Wonder Woman movie is saving the DC franchise.
Yep.
Where Marvel really got it, especially with Iron Man 1.
100%.
They really got it. I mean, Iron Man 1 did not have to be based on a comic book if you knew nothing about this character.
Yep.
It was like a science fiction James Bond
Absolutely.
type movie, right? And they threw in little things for the fans, like his armor was gold for like 2.5 seconds, right? But we all know it went from gray to gold to red and gold.
Right.
But so it didn't matter to the audience that, Tony was like, that's 2 gold, add some red, right?
Mm.
But for us comic geeks, that was like cool. It was like, yes, we saw the gold armor, right?
Exactly.
So they added something for us that meant nothing to the audience,
Right.
but it fit perfectly into the storyline.
A lot of wink and
was
you
who
missed it.
Tony Stark was. That's right. And they're doing a fantastic job, I think. I mean, I haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2 yet. I work quite a bit.
Right.
But everybody's telling me that they're having a lot of fun with that movie.
Yeah, I disagree with that one.
Sorry?
I disagreed with most people's opinions on Guardians too.
Oh, you didn't like it? Huh?
I didn't.
Wow.
I'm like one of those people where there's usually no gray area with me. I either really love something or I really hate something. And with this movie, with this movie, I didn't love it and I didn't hate it. I felt it was mediocre at best. I felt there was a very shallow, empty storyline, and there was obviously a lot of CGI. I felt there was more of a cash grab than there was a quality story in my eyes.
Ah, that's a shame. I'm sorry to hear that. But then again, we'll have to talk about that, you and I,
100%.
privately after I see it.
100%. 100%. I'm not going to ruin nothing for you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a question. As growing up in comics and reading the books, and you obviously know the stories, are you like me where when you're watching one of these films and you're like, that's not the way the story is. Why are they doing it this way? Because I get crazy with that stuff.
See, I'm the opposite. I go into this thinking that this has to work for film viewers.
Okay.
Or TV, or if it's a TV show, it has to work for the TV viewers. So it can't be about just us. If it stays true to the original concept, I'm happy enough that if it makes the general public who doesn't know anything about comic books really happy, it means it was a good movie. So I walk into it as this is going to be a movie. Like, I don't know anything about it. And I enjoy it so much more that way.
Right.
And you're right. There's still times when I go, ooh, why did they do this?
Right.
But when I saw Doctor Strange, I didn't care that they changed so many things.
Yep.
I thought it paid a real, it paid a lot of respect towards Ditko, which was fantastic for me. And the movie audience doesn't even know who he is.
You're right. You're right about that.
But I felt that as a movie, it was a great movie. And so if you like that genre, then it's great. Who cares what's going on in the comic book? I mean, you don't want to make Doctor Strange into Superman, right? That would be silly.
Right.
But you can change little aspects here and there to make it work for the population. Because let's face it, when the 60s Marvel started, some of them were pretty hokey. If you try to put Amazing Fantasy 15 on the screen, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, not for present time.
It's not 2017.
Right.
This was the 60s. So you have to reach out to the audience that's paying for the tickets or that's paying for Netflix. I really have been digging Netflix a lot.
That's my favorite thing.
I thought Iron Fist was a little slow. But I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with Iron Fist with the Defenders.
Did you watch the entire Iron Fist series?
Oh yeah.
I thought it started really good, and I thought the ending was very anticlimactic.
Yeah, I thought the whole show was anticlimactic.
Really?
Actually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But I didn't dislike it.
Okay.
But like I said, I'm hoping it's just a prelude to the Defenders.
That's what I think it is.
But I also think that we got spoiled. I think that, Luke Cage was so good.
Yep.
Jessica Jones was so good. Daredevil was so good.
Second season of Daredevil was amazing.
Right. And so, if a show comes along and you're expecting this, super great TV show and you just get a good TV show, you get a little disappointed, and all of a sudden it's not a good TV show. It's just okay TV show.
Right.
I think when we have high expectations, we hurt ourselves. And not that we shouldn't expect the best from these people, but once again, people are human, and not everything's going to fly.
No, you're right about that. Let me ask you something else. Growing up, reading these books, and now that you actually, do the grading and you have this company, this very successful company, do you still currently read books? Do you still pick up what's current, or are you kind of done with that? Is it like just kind of overkill at that point for you?
Oh, no, I can't stop reading comic books. Actually, it's funny. I don't go every Wednesday and buy the new books. I buy trades because I travel so much.
Okay.
And I like to read on the airplane, especially. And so I buy trades, and I had the flu 2 weeks ago. And the saving grace was comic books. I was able to read volumes 22 through 27 of The Walking Dead.
Wow.
I was so happy because I was falling so behind. Yeah, I'm reading Injustice right now, which I'm really, really digging.
Yep, that's
By
a solid
DC.
read.
Yeah, and it's funny. I almost didn't pick it up because it's based on a video game.
Yep.
Until I got reviews from some of my friends, you know. But then there's series that will stay with me forever, like Sandman was fantastic, Preacher, The Boys. I mean,
The Boys is an amazing read.
Oh yeah, I mean it's not for kids.
No, definitely not.
Remind the audience.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's definitely not PG-13. That's for sure.
No, it's verging past R. But
yeah.
But so I'm in love with the medium. I mean, I can't get enough of it. And if you look by the side of my bed, you'll see about 40 trades that haven't been read yet. So I'm always about 6 months or 9 months, I should say, to like a year and a half behind.
Oh wow!
So I never read any of the comic blogs because of the spoilers.
Right.
You know, I don't want that.
Yep.
You know, I don't want to know, you know, what happens to, you know, Batman, you know, 5 issues ago because I'm 12 issues behind.
Steve, I gotta tell you, man. You know, I'm gonna be 40 years old this year, and there's really not a lot of things that, sadly, that I really get excited about. I'm genuinely happy about or look forward to, and you know, comic books, the movies that they're based off of, and the Netflix series. Those are 3 things that I genuinely look forward to. You know, and it's one of my biggest beefs right now with trailers leading up to these films being out. I don't want to, because I feel like they put out so many trailers and the trailers are so long. By the time you watch the movie, those scenes are ruined. Like, it has no impact on me.
I watch. Yeah, I agree. I watch one trailer and one trailer only.
Yep.
And it's really funny. It'll be the first trailer that they put out, and everybody in the grading room is like, "Oh wait, the trailer's out," and we'll all huddle around one person's computer, and for 2.25 minutes, watch the trailer. And then everybody will be like, "Oh, that looked terrible. That looked great. This looked weird. This looked, like, oh my God, how could this person be playing this part?" And all this speculation, which is really silly because you can't tell anything from 2.5 minutes or 2.25 minutes or whatever it is. But we're all a bunch of geeks. So the minute the trailer was announced, we're all like, "Oh, okay, we'll all watch it together." It's really cool.
That's great. That's great.
It really is. And but yeah, I mean, I'm so passionate about the comic books. I can't tell you. And music as well. I don't just have one hobby. I love live music, so I try to see as much live music as I can.
That's hilarious.
Totally one-dimensional.
No. That's hilarious to me because my 3 biggest passions are training, music, and everything pretty much comic book related. Those are my 3 things. I mean, I got to tell you the truth. For me personally, comic books are just it's more than just the art and the stories, and really just being able to see how much the stories reflect life and learning good lessons and bad lessons. For me, comic books really saved my life in a lot of ways. I grew up in a very violent, alcohol-fueled household, and I would lock myself in my room for hours with my books, whether I was reading them, staring at them, or trying to emulate, drawing the covers or whatever caught my eye. And, I always wanted to look like the characters, which inevitably got me into the gym. And that's why I look the way I do these days. I've been training for 25 years now. And,
wow.
Yeah, I just, that's my thing, and I wanted to look like the characters that I was reading about, and I just, for me, also too, you know what? When I was going to school, I was always 2 and 3 reading grade levels ahead of everybody else, because maybe at the time, in the 3rd grade and the 4th grade, I didn't understand certain words that were being used in the books that I was reading, but the way the pictures were drawn, the context, the way you kind of got a gist of what was going on. So I had
well, sure.
Yeah, I had like a higher reading comprehension than most of my classmates because of books, the comic books. And for me personally, comic books has been nothing but a positive force in my life. And I guess that's why sometimes I get a little crazy when it comes to the collecting, because it really helped shape it's not even shaped who I am, it's part of who I am,
Well, it is who you are. I mean, what we do and what we read or what we collect, or I don't care if it's comic books or something else. I mean, what we spend our time doing defines who we are, correct?
100%.
I
100%.
mean, and like I said, the music for me is very, very important. Live music. I'll be 54 in June, and I grew up I was born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s. I'm an old Grateful Dead head.
Okay.
So I used to follow them around the country and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But so I didn't go to the gym. I'm not buff. Not like you.
That's all right. We all got our own things.
Sure. But, what we love definitely defines us. And, besides, the only thing more important to me than those things are friends and family.
Right.
But without the comic books, I wouldn't have the friends that I have.
Right.
So they go hand in hand, Really, like I said, I'm very, very blessed to have so many great friends in this hobby. I can't even really describe it. It's just, I'm so blessed.
Just to bring it home, I think that one of the things that forges a lot of friendships and relationships are the interests. I mean, James and I became friends based off comics. I mean, just overhearing a conversation and, next thing you know, we're going to New York Comic Con, Big Apple Con, Eternal Con.
Right.
Yeah, me, Rich and I actually met from it was my first gym here in New York, and he overheard me talking with my training partner at the time about comic books, and that's how, in the gym, talking about comic books is how Rich and I became friends, actually.
Yep.
And what was that, 2001, 2002,
yep.
Right? Something like that?
Yep. And,
that's so cool.
And, here we are now, doing the show together and everything else. So to take what you said and really put some weight behind it even more so, I mean, it's something that's brought all of us together. So, I definitely can agree with you on that.
Sure. I mean, in 2001, I was on a plane to San Diego, and I'm sitting next to two guys, and, I don't care. I pull out my trade paperback and start reading whatever trade it was. And they'd look at me and they go, "You going to Comic-Con?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "So are we." And one of the two guys, we became friends, but one of the two guys has become like a brother to me. And he's the one who puts together the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital charity art auction at New York City Comic-Con and Chicago C2E2 Comic-Con. And he asked me if I'd be the auctioneer. And so we now work together for charity and to help children in need and families with children in need. And but we became great friends because I, pulled out a trade paperback on the way to San Diego.
Mm-hmm. And
we speak now every month, even though he's in New York and I'm in Florida. We speak at least once a month, and we get together, for dinner twice a year after the auction, late night. And when we put together this fantastic auction, we've raised over $300,000 now for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital with the help of the creators and the bidders.
That's amazing.
It's been fantastic.
I think I think that's great because, like we were talking before we started recording, how I'm involved with Grasshopper Comics Charity Drive for John Thiesens. I think that's a huge thing to always give back. And it's, I'm a firm believer in this. The energy that you put out is what's going to return to you, so.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big, I'm an old hippie, Mm-hmm. I believe in helping each other all the time. That's why I'm on the board of the Hero Initiative, which is a charity that gives back to those artists and writers who were making no money back in the day. They didn't get credit for writing movies. Their artwork didn't sell for a lot of money. They didn't even get their artwork returned to them. So we help with their hospital bills, their food bills, or if they need somewhere to live, we help find a place for them to live. So being involved with the Hero Initiative is really important to me, and I do that at every convention.
That's amazing.
No, that's huge stuff. And to tell you the truth, that's what it's supposed to be about.
Yep. Giving back to the community that made you who you are is, just a testament to the art form and everything that we do to support it.
Yeah, it brings everything full circle.
Absolutely. I mean, I always believe that if you would ever take charity, if you ever needed it, God forbid, then you should give it while you can.
Yep, 100%.
And I know that if something was wrong with my daughter or my granddaughter, God forbid, and I needed St. Jude's, and they were there for me, well, I better be there for them today.
That's it. No, I think what you're doing both with St. Jude's and with the Hero Initiative, we think is incredibly noble. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very kind of you. But I do it because it's the right thing, not for the accolades. It's very important.
That's it. Sometimes sometimes the heroes don't need to wear capes.
I mean, what he's talking about though is really the essence of a lot of the stories that I've read throughout the years.
Sure. Well, we grew up reading good versus evil, right?
Right.
Always.
And we want good to win.
Right.
That's for sure.
Exactly.
Well, Steve, we want to be respectful of your time. Just a couple of links we wanted to put out there. CBCScomics.com, your source for all information regarding grading and restoration is also available on there as well, correct?
Yes, we talk about restoration and we talk about the grading scale and all that, and how to submit comics to us.
Awesome.
And the events that we're going to be at to take in books.
All right.
We'll be doing on-site grading at Heroes in Charlotte in about 2 weeks at Heroes Con. That's a great convention, by the way. If you guys haven't been to the Charlotte Comic Con, do yourselves a favor. Go. It's a real Comic Con.
That's good to know.
All the social media and not social media. It's not about media and everything. It's just a real comic convention. And Shelton Drum, who puts it on, is a fantastic guy.
That's what I like to hear, because me personally, I don't enjoy going to cons, because I feel like the majority of the shows are everything but what I love to do, which is the comic books, which is very annoying to me.
Sure, San Diego, which used to be the show to go to for comic books, I have friends who skip it now, and they go to real comic book shows.
Exactly.
Completely different.
100%. Before we end this call, I just remember something really quick, and I wanted to ask you. It's something that I had spoken about on an earlier episode of our show. If I choose to, basically send a book to CBCS because I want it graded, so on and so forth. Now, if I ship through FedEx, UPS, United States Postal Service, whatever company I use to send it to you guys, and that book gets lost, I know from personal experience with the post office, basically, if they lose your item or it gets stolen or it gets damaged, you have to produce a physical receipt in order to get reimbursed whatever insurance you took out of. How do you go about insuring a book that is possibly worth X amount of dollars before shipping it off to you? Like, how would you handle that,
Oh, well, on our submission form, we ask you to put down an insured value.
Okay.
So this way, when the book comes in, we have it on everything's logged into the computer and checked before it goes into grading.
Okay.
So everything's done under camera. So you could say you put an Action 1 in there, but we open it under camera.
Okay.
And if there's no Action 1, sorry, you can't scam us.
No.
At the same time,
right.
If I'm just saying.
Okay.
I don't mean you.
No. I get it.
But the insured value, God forbid something happens to your book while it's on our premises, it's insured for that value. And so if you're shipping, first of all, don't ship FedEx unless you have collectibles insurance.
Okay.
FedEx does not insure collectibles.
That's good to know.
Right. So I would use United States Postal Service, registered and insured, and make sure it's signed for. And once again, insure it for the right amount of money.
Well, that was my thing. If something happens to the book, if it gets stolen, damaged, lost, whatever, you have to physically produce them a receipt. So say I have, a book that's worth, $100,000. They're not going to just turn around and hand you $100,000 without a physical receipt. That was my thing with that, with the shipping. If they lose it, if it gets stolen,
well,
not so much CBCS.
I don't think they'll insure it for $100,000.
Right.
I think it's $25,000 or something
max,
like that.
Right, is the max.
But once again, I would take pictures.
Okay.
I would, definitely always try to get receipts when you're buying vintage books.
Right.
And then you'll have the submission form that you sent in to us, you'll have a copy of that saying, you know, this is where I sent them. But like I said, be very careful with FedEx.
Mm-hmm. It's good to know.
They said they don't insure collectibles, so they'll take your money.
Right. I know.
And then you get nothing if it gets lost.
Yeah, that company
But, I mean,
crossed off the list now.
You know, we've had very, very few instances where a book has never gotten to us if it's done correctly. Because when you go through United States Postal Service and it's registered and insured, everybody who touches it has to sign for it.
Right. But me
so
personally,
they don't want, that employee doesn't want to be the guy who lost the $20,000 package.
Right. Me personally, you know, aside from the value of a rare book, in my head, like the crazy person I am, I'm like, the chance of me getting this book again is not happening. For me, I'm not even going to send it to them. I'm jumping on a plane. I'm physically bringing it there myself because I'm that crazy.
Oh, no, we have plenty of people who fly their books in to us, especially because of the value. But the other thing you can do is, like, you guys are in, you know, New York, right? And you also travel to conventions. When you go to a convention where we're at, we take the books in there. It actually saves you shipping and insurance.
Okay.
And we take it back.
Right.
And we give you a receipt saying we have your book.
Right.
Now, we wouldn't take an unopened box and say, yeah, there's an Action 1 in there. You have to show us the Action 1.
Right,
you know?
right, exactly.
But so if you're really worried about it, you know, you can come to a convention where we're at.
Okay.
And you can give it to us there.
And can people physically walk into your office or building to actually hand you books to get graded? Like, is there someone at a desk?
Sure.
Okay, you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We actually have rooms that, you know, for dealers and collectors who want to submit, and they come in, but you have to make an appointment. You can't just walk in. We're not a storefront.
Okay.
I mean, everything is, you know, like I said, everything's on camera.
Right.
You have to use a swipe key to get through all the doors.
Nice.
It's a heavy duty surveillance and security.
All right, that's good to know. The Yellow Brick Road to get to the to see the wizard.
Sure. Well, yeah. If you guys ever come down, please tell me ahead of time. As long as I'm in town, you know.
That's good to know.
We'll get together and I'll look over some of your books for you.
That's awesome. That just to chop it up, just like some kids, you know, hanging out in a living room or something. That's awesome. You know, and like likewise, if you know when you come up here, or if you come up here, I know Rich was telling me that you miss eating like a good pastrami sandwich. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure. Being from New York, you know, you miss good pizza, you miss a great egg roll.
Exactly. We'd love to sit down and, you know, and just have a meal and just talk books. You know, that's what we do.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Well, you know, we'll stay in touch, and I hope you guys will stay in touch at least.
100%. Me personally, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, I hope you stay in touch. It's,
100%.
You know, I would love meeting other collectors and other, you know, hobbyists. It's just great talking comic books, and we can't get it all done on, you know, the phone like this.
Right.
But you know, I'll be in for New York Comic Con. But if you guys are going to go to Baltimore or wherever it is, you know, let me know ahead of time. And like I said, we always get a group of collectors and dealers together for dinner, and
that's awesome.
We always have a great time, and we talk comics, and we talk music, family, everything.
I mean,
it's great.
Just from a little bit that we've spoken to over this phone call, I know I can easily talk to you for hours upon hours, and it would feel like 30 seconds to me, because I feel like you just have a lot of information, a lot of experience, just from growing up, from just personally collecting to the actual business that you own and run. I just think it's amazing. And me personally, I could just talk to you forever. That's just me, you know?
Well, you guys have my phone number, so, you know, I'm usually home at night unless I'm traveling. And, you know, feel free to pick up the phone and call and just talk comic books.
Awesome.
For sure.
You know, like I said, I love making new friends. It's always good.
Likewise. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to make this phone call happen.
Thank you for having me.
Like,
it's an honor. It's
greatly,
really, really nice.
Greatly appreciated, because not only did you clarify some things and answered really, you know, questions that we've been dying to ask somebody, you know, just, I haven't met you in person. I could just tell you're just a stand-up dude. You're somebody who I would want to be around, just a good person, period. And, you know what? That's what it's all about in my eyes. You know, we just happen to like and have a passion and love for the books. You know, so I think that's a grand slam.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a good friendship going forward.
That's for sure. All right, Steve, just a quick reminder, cbcscomics.com, facebook.com/cbcscomics. Also, you guys have the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/CBCS Comics.
Also, the charity that he's involved with.
Also, Steve works with St. Jude's and with the Hero Initiative. Links for both of those charities, as well as all of CBCS's links, will be in the show notes for this episode. Again, Steve, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us.
Yeah,
great guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
100%, 100%. All the nerds, geeks, mutants, and freaks definitely are going to appreciate this interview. Thank you so much.
Yep, we'll send you the link, Steve.
All right, thank you so much. You guys are very welcome, and thank you.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
You too. Have a great night, guys.
Bye. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed our sit down with Steve Borock from CBCS. Jimbo Slice, take us out.
Yeah, I can't thank Steve enough for taking the time out of his busy schedule to chop it up with us about what he does and the industry itself. And I truly hope that all you nerds, geeks, mutants, and freaks really enjoyed the interview as much as I did, because I had a ton of fun doing it.
All right, guys, you know what time it is. Schematics, take us out.